Hey gang, dearest of all your friends, Clay here, Mountain Music Exchange once again, and today we're going to talk about the Gibson USA Les Paul Mary Ford signature model. Alright gang, so before we get started, user LTXR9973 made a comment in our last video. That was going to be the 1963 Epiphone SG Custom from the Inspired by Gibson Custom series. User LTXR9973 said came for the SG, stayed for the accent. I really appreciate that. I'm kind of stuck with this, so I'm doing my very best to enunciate and speak the proper King's English, but it just, you can't get rid of all of this southern charm, right? So anyway, thank you very much for the comment. Check out that video if you haven't seen that one already. That is a really good guitar from the Epiphone Inspired by Gibson Custom lineup. And since I've got you here already, it is time for that shameless like and subscribe plea. Gang, if you like the video and you like any of our other content or you want to see more from us, we are now in 4K, in beautiful, glorious, crystalline clear 4K. Give us a like and a subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. It really helps out the channel. We do have a little bit more coming along as well. I do plan on trying to get a different maybe sort of format or setup coming soon that will work, I think, a little bit better for how we talk about these guitars. So anyway, give us a like and a subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, hang with the gang here at Mountain Music Exchange, and thank you all so much for even watching in the first place. All right, without further ado, gang, I have in front of me here in my very hands, in my slightly smaller than average hands, little David C. Anderson shout out there if you watch the Knife Center channel, the Gibson USA Les Paul Mary Ford signature model. It is very unique. Immediately right off the bat, as soon as you take a look at this, you can see this floral pattern and this sort of longer ES style pick guard here. And then of course you see the arm guard here with the similar floral pattern, which I think is pretty interesting. It definitely stands out from like your standard sort of gold top and kind of just sets it apart. And this is a specific request from Mary Ford originally. And in case, by the way, you're not familiar with Mary Ford or who Mary Ford is, most of you may know Mary Ford simply as the wife of Les Paul. But Mary Ford and Les Paul pretty much set the music world on fire in the 50s. She was an excellent guitar player in her own right, so I think sometimes maybe she gets overshadowed by the fact that, you know, she was with Les Paul. This guitar is called the Les Paul, and Les Paul is the name you hear the most from. And there was also a previous custom shop model of this same guitar that sort of adhered to like the more historic spec a little better. I just think this is a pretty interesting guitar, really. We're gonna go top to bottom on this in just a second, but a couple of things I want to note before we do that. Of course, the arm guard here is an interesting addition. It looks really unique. I like the way this looks. I'm not always, on a deeply personal level, the biggest Goldtop fan. I always liked them, but I've never really fallen in love with them. And they kind of become a little ubiquitous as you see so many of them over the years and that sort of thing. So I really like that they've set it apart with this sort of additional flair that they've added on here. I think it looks really good. So this is probably something in the style of like a vintage Les Paul with regards to sound, right? However, this does have a 60s slim taper neck. This also has Burstbucker 2 and 3 pickups as opposed to the 1950 standards Burstbucker 1 and 2, or the 1960 standards like 61 Burstbuckers or 60s Burstbuckers that are Alnico 5 magnets, a little hotter. So this sort of lands in between those. But that being said, when I say that a 2 and 3 are hotter, I don't mean tremendously hotter. It's not like they swapped in super ceramic 500s in here or anything like that. It's still gonna have a very vintage sound, very vintage feel, and all around just be a cool looking guitar if nothing else. Plus, I can appreciate that, you know, Gibson to an extent is starting to acknowledge more female players in general and put out more sort of models that honor and tribute them. So mad props to Gibson for this guitar. Very cool. We're going to go top to bottom now. Of course, You have your Gibson mother of pearl inlay here. You do have your vintage style tuners here. And by the way, before I get any further, this guitar does run $29.99. Blank truss rod cover here. You have a Graphtec nut here, which in my opinion, probably superior to a vintage style nut in a lot of ways. Helps kind of keep everything from getting bound up here. So you have kind of smooth travel with your strings as you tune it, bend, etc. Kind of doesn't get bound up, get caught up. Just kind of helps your tuning stability, and with a Les Paul, that is never a bad thing. Single ply binding all the way down the neck and around the body, just like a good standard would. And rosewood fingerboard here. And of course, you've got your pearloid inlays here, trapezoid, of course, like a good standard would. Amber switch tip here. You do have, because this is a Gibson USA, you do have the more flared strap buttons here. Again, they're still made of the same material. They look and feel very similar until you get sort of to the top here and it flares out farther. On a Les Paul especially, but really on any guitar, if you can get more flare out upward here to keep that strap secure, is never, ever, ever a bad thing. Trust me. I can tell you that for a fact. Okay, of course, beautiful metallic gold paint here. Burst Bucker 2, Burst Bucker 3 here. You've got the longer ES style pickguard with the floral pattern. You do have your ABR1 style bridge with the wire retainer. I say ABR1 style because it does have posts that go into bushings in the body here. I'll get you a close-up of that, as opposed to the posts going directly into the wood, into the body. So it's sort of, the style is correct, but it's not a true ABR1 bridge. You pretty much have to be in custom shop or vintage territory to get that. And then of course your standard tailpiece here. You do have the thumb bleeders here with, of course, your gold knobs, which sort of course, accentuate all the other gold here. One thing I found pretty interesting though was on the back, this is more of a red here rather than like a natural. I know typically with a Goldtop, you sort of have a natural finish here, and I really actually like the red hue against the gold. I think it looks really good. Plus, you know, you've got your standard sort of two-piece back here. You can see the seam line running up there pretty easily. I'm glad that Gibson is doing this all the way around, just trying to do something a little different than the norm. I think we can all appreciate that from time to time, even if we as Gibson fans or guitar fans are vintage lovers. And this is, make no mistake, based entirely on a vintage guitar, a specific vintage guitar at that. But even to that extent, we can always appreciate seeing something a little different or some changes made here and there just to keep things fresh. I think Gibson's done a great job of doing that. But the question is, how does it sound? And I can tell you for a fact this is going to play good. I can feel the action right now, and it feels very comfortable. The neck feels very straight. I've not had any trouble. I'm not going to say this is universal, but every Gibson that has come in here to the store, as soon as we unbox it, it's pretty much ready to play. It's set up pretty correctly. You always may want to set up something to taste, but if you just needed to pull this out of the box in some crazy emergency situation and just play it, it's ready to go. It's already intonated, it's already, you know, the action is smooth, the neck is straight. And this does come, by the way, with the standard Gibson USA brown hardshell case with that pink interior. I don't believe that it comes with any flare. I took a look. It does come with your standard sort of Gibson strap and cleaning cloth and things of that nature, but nothing specific to Mary Ford. But I think as soon as you take a look at the guitar itself, you will just know that you won't have to have any additional provenance, for example, to sort of prove that this is a Mary Ford model. The specs themselves will take care of that. But the question is, how does it sound? We know how it plays, or I know how it plays, and I can relay that to you as best I can. I think these Burst Bucker pickups are gonna sound great. I've played plenty of Burst Bucker pickups in other guitars, and I've never had any issue, but this combination as a whole, let's take a look and hear how that might sound. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna be using a Line 6 Helix. I'm going to be using a Fender Deluxe style amp model for cleans, and I'm going to be using a Brit 2203, sort of Marshall-y high gain tone, because I realize this is a vintage Les Paul type, and Mary Ford was very much a clean player, but we can't have a Les Paul without a rockin' riff. Can we? Can we? I don't know. Tell me in the comments below. Can we? And I may have a little bit of reverb and a little bit of slap back delay very lightly, just for depth, so you get some better sort of sound to listen to rather than just an empty clean guitar. If you prefer it the other way, let me know in the comments below. But without further ado, let's rock, gang. All right, gang, so this guitar, the Mary Ford Les Paul from the Gibson USA Standard line. I really, really like this guitar. I don't know how cool I look with it, but I don't know how cool I look with any guitar. So I think that it's a cool looking guitar, and I really like the way it plays. I like the way it sounds. I like what Gibson has done here. Of course, I'm a self-confessed Gibson fanboy, and I'll, die on that hill or whatever, but I still think that Gibson is doing really cool stuff right now with the Les Paul from all their different ranges. And I love that there is a Mary Ford model, and that Mary Ford finally gets some recognition on a grander scale from Gibson. I just think it's super cool. Plus, being a Les Paul model, there's a lot of history there that kind of goes along with that I think is pretty neat. But that has been the Gibson Les Paul Mary Ford Signature Edition. Gang, check us out online at mountainmusicexchange.com. Check us out on Facebook. Check us out on Instagram and TikTok. And don't forget to check out other videos here on the channel, as well as Haas's shorts. Wait, the short videos that Haas does? Yeah, that's it. And that's going to have us for today, gang. I'm Clay. You rock. And remember, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, make it loud. See you, gang.